Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming and games through a feminist lens. Today, I am your host, Matt, and I'm joined by my friends Alex and Jem. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content, or you can send us a one-off donation via PayPal to our email address, wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com.
So today we are continuing our deep dive into the world of girls' sport. We've immediately come up with the revelation of, oh yeah, some teachers do some horrible things, and that trauma from childhood still has a massive impact on the adult life. What a surprise. So if you have a story that is similar to the ones that were shared in our last episode, do let us know, because the worst another thing about childhood trauma is it can be very, very isolating, and to just know that you aren't the only one who's experienced these kinds of things can help. So for this episode, we are going to so we've had a very, very personal exploration of the topic. We're going to look at it as, I suppose, maybe as our adult selves appraising the system itself and what we see there and what we should change. I'm going to pick on you, Jem, as you're the only one who has a child, and see what your experience has been there.
So my daughter really loved playing football at school and really enjoyed playing football. She loved PE. She's always been really physical since she was tiny, and she played in the football team, and she played football with the boys, and it was mostly the boys. I mean, it was a tiny primary school, so there wasn't a lot of them. But yeah, she really enjoyed it. We also took her she did tennis lessons from the age of 5 through to 11. And yeah, she was really involved with the football, and she did all of these things, really enjoyed them until she got to high school. And yeah, once she hit high school, she carried on with the gymnastics until the pandemic sort of put a close to all of that. And she still enjoyed the sports, but she didn't enjoy team sports. She really struggled with that, but that has more to do with her neurospiciness than I think anything else, because she just would find it hard to work with other people in that way that team sports do. But I think it just became a thing, like girls don't do sports. This whole thing just really came in there really fast, and it was so sad when she did the shift from primary to high school, because she started at primary. And she was at primary playing football with the boys and running around in the playground. And then they go to high school, and suddenly the boys are carrying on playing football in the playground, but all the girls do is walk around in a gang, in little gangs, chatting and watching the boys. It was so sad to see this massive shift, that suddenly they went from primary, where they were all running around together and hanging out together, and to secondary and high school, where they're all segregated down gender lines and very gender sort of specific behaviours. And there was the boys play rugby and the girls play netball or hockey in the winter, and in the summer the girls play netball and the boys play football. It was just so sad that so quickly it got segregated. she went to a different school, which was much smaller, and then they had other things like outdoor pursuits and things where they did rock climbing and canoeing and things. But by that point, she'd already stepped out of that mindset, and that moment had been lost, I think, for her, which is a shame, because she, up until that point, she was kind of embarrassingly sporty. I was not sporty, and suddenly I had this daughter, and that was dragging me to stand on touch lines and in cold tennis rooms, and or tennis halls and all of that. So yeah, I think attitudes have changed from when I was at school and from when you were at school, Alex. I do think that there has been an improvement, and I do think that there is a greater effort made to include kids in sports as much as possible. And certainly at her second school, her teachers, her sports teachers, were all really nice and very caring and did what they could to include as many people and make it as accessible as possible. But I don't think it could undo the damage that had been done by previous schools and also by society's attitudes to sport. And as a parent, I think it's so frustrating, because you look at it and you go, like, we did everything that we could to nurture and support her in her enjoyment of physical activity and sports and all of these things. We did as much as we could to do that without sort of enforcing it, and yet it didn't matter when it came to the social expectations and social attitudes around girls and sport. Just railroaded everything that we'd done. So even when you've got sort of the best will in the world, it's very difficult.
It's and the even if you have, so like best case scenario, you've got two. I don't even this is the best case scenario. Whatever the case, children spend the majority of their time at school. That's their life, and so they're going to base their world view and how they engage with the world on that school environment, and that is where the external society gets to come in and still forms the basis of school society. And a thing that the system should do is remove luck from the equation of life as much as possible, because like in terms of economic status, it shouldn't matter how much money your family has. You should be able to have a school experience where you're not being going, well, we don't have, it'd be nice if we had a treadmill so you could do this, but we don't because there isn't enough money. Then some schools have insanely high quality gyms that you could do, and the like with gender, if you're a boy, then it's lucky that there is a sporting infrastructure that is there for you. When you go, oh, if you're a girl, you're unlucky. No, because the system is there that it isn't there that you should have access to. So it's got nothing to do with your personal luck. It's just weird.
Yeah, it's interesting how we talk about, obviously, the things that we can access within the school environment and the culture of that school environment as well. I was looking up one of England women's rugby people in the team, because one of them, in fact, went to my secondary school. Jess Breach, who's currently playing for England Rugby. She is very, very good. I have watched her quite a few matches now, because of course it's the Six Nations at the moment. But reading her Wikipedia profile, I see that she actually accessed a lot of that sport outside of the school environment, which is interesting as well. So it's talking about her playing for Chichester Rugby Football Club from the age of 6, and then Pulborough Rugby Football Club at the age of 14. And then obviously went on to play for national teams. And then it says she was also a keen athlete and competed in sprint hurdling, the English Schools Athletics Championships, so given that is at school as well. She played netball, hockey, and was a county level gymnast, so incredibly sporty person. But I wonder also whether the access to sport, then perhaps also the enjoyment of sport is also down to perhaps your family's position in society and access to those sports outside of the school environment, because those come with a cost as well, don't they? A lot of the time.
Another part of the coin of the being lucky is you shouldn't have to be special either.
No.
I listened to a podcast about criminal athletes, and 99% of them are American because the podcasts are American, so that's what they know. And a huge portion of the highest quality athletes in America are black, and when you look at so you see now, you can say if you look back 60 years ago to segregation, and then you take the average black person then and then compare to the black person now, you can go, oh, look at this black quarterback is the most highest paid quarterback ever. Aren't black people doing well? When he is incredibly lucky to have the talents he has, but if you get these athletes that they pick from, like in the like kids who are living in poverty, if there's a child who can make the powerful people money, they'll pluck that child out because they're special and give them access to the resources they have. But then everyone else just gets left where they are, and that is another damaging stereotype that can happen in something like women's sports. We look at role models like professional athletes. When something like Gladiators TV show is a critical part of it as well, because we only get to see for the longest time a certain perspective on women's sports, when it was like, oh, look at Maria Sharapova. She's great at tennis, but she's really sexy. And and again, that's something I think is interesting about girls. Another thing that impacts in secondary school is puberty, and it not just being about what the girl is going through, but about how they feel seen by the society. So there's a common experiencing of a girl realizing the first time that a man looked at her in a sexual way, and how all of a sudden you come out of primary school and all of a sudden you're in that world, and that has an impact as well. And yeah, just the system just being so broken and damaging.
I think talking about the system, one of the facts I came across when I was looking at this topic was that Black British children have the most positive attitudes to sports and exercise, but Black British girls are substantially less active, and that they are not just less active than Black British boys, but 11% less active than white British girls. So we're talking about girls who are actually very positive about sport, and yet are still even less likely to engage with it than other girls, and this is a sort of intersectional ethnicity gap that we're seeing. That just, and what that says to me is that this isn't just about girls not wanting to do sport. This is a bigger thing, because these girls do want to do sport, and yet they aren't. They're doing even less sport than white girls. And so what's going on? There's a big distinction there. And I think that, I think to just, so many people say, oh, it's because they don't like the way they look when they're playing sport. They don't want to wear the PE kits, or they don't want to be seen to be sweaty or, running, or, girls are worried about building muscle. Or that, well, they get periods, they're menstruating, so they can't do sport because, nobody wants to run around when they're on their period. All of these things are, I have personally not experienced these excuses, these reasons why girls don't want to do sport. That, the girls that I've come into contact with, both when I was younger, but also around my daughter growing up, the reasons that they have not engaged with sport have not been because they were worried about how they looked in the uniform. I mean, if you look at the clothes that most of the girls are wearing when they're outside of school, or when they're, even in what they do with their school uniform is it's all about how short it can be, and there isn't a fear about that. So there's something else going on, and it's something about, I don't know what it is, but it feels to me like it's more than the reasons that we're so commonly given. And that fact came from the Women in Sports, womeninsport.org, who did some research into this, and I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's another eternally exhausting example of you look at the inequalities in society and go, I wonder how those segments of society are faring in this other area. So children's sport. So surely they're just kids. Surely everyone's sort of in the same mix. And you go, oh, even though. So again, you go, oh, black boys, they're really enthusiastic about sport, just like the white boys. Hooray! Aren't we solving racism? We're in a post-racism society. You go, well, that can make sense because, again, like I said, a huge amount of the most athletic people on the planet are black people, and so like people like Michael Jordan, Usain Bolt, LeBron James. There's this like decades and decades of some of the most iconic athletes ever being black men, but the misogynoir, the racism and misogyny that black women face is the other side of that coin to the misogyny that white women face and non-black women face. And so it goes, oh yeah, so it makes sense that black boys are more into sport. And then when you take the way that Serena Williams was treated when she gets angry on court, that is the messaging. She's the most accomplished tennis player in history, and the the perception of black women athletes is still so catastrophically racist. So that is how Serena Williams was treated. And then there was that Olympic athlete who was banned from competing because she had too much testosterone or something. And
yeah, I mean, that was a whole other episode, isn't it? But the banning of trans women within sport, which is, yeah, we can save that for another episode, certainly. But yeah, I think like every area of life, intersectionality always plays a part. We talk about it a lot on the pod when we talk about gaming and things, but it obviously has an impact on sport as well. Just before we started these episodes, I sent you both a little reel from Instagram about a woman who interviewed Coco Gauff, who is another black female tennis player. And she asked her once about how she manages looking after her hair when she plays, she gets really sweaty. And since then, the journalist sort of felt like, man, I hope it's not my fault, but she's been asked about her hair pretty much in every tournament. And you wonder, well, do other women tennis players get asked about their hair in the same way? Or do men get asked about their hair when they compete at tennis tournaments? There have been some pretty interesting hairstyles on both sides of the game. I can say that having watched some of them play live. But yeah, I mean, is it really what we've come to talk about? Are we here to talk about a professional athlete's hairstyle? Or are we here to talk about the game or the match that they've just played? Is it important to talk about those aspects of a professional athlete's life to present them as more than just a tennis player? It's a question that's quite interesting, I think, but it definitely makes you think about the difference in perception between male and female athletes as well.
You've just reminded me of the third side to a coin. So I don't think that's how coins work, but it will make sense enough. That not every, again, like with the, you shouldn't have to be lucky to get a good experience with sport. You shouldn't have to be special to have a good experience. You also shouldn't, not every single female athlete needs to be the trailblazing, like going, don't ask me about my hair, and the people that their natural way of dealing with things is that, don't talk to me like that. You think you are? You're talking to me like that because I'm a girl, and you talking about asking a white person having like any interaction with a black woman about their hair is a very storied troubling topic.
I should clarify also the women in the reel was also of African American ethnicity as well, and so she was kind of asking it because she struggled with managing her hair in sweaty conditions, and she was like, "Coco, how do you manage your hair?" Just to kind of give some context there. I realise I missed that out earlier,
and that's the good thing, because then that's the authentic richness of diversity that you can dredge from that. Whereas if there's a book that has the most fantastic title that I have not yet read, which is No, You Can't Touch My Hair, which is written by a black woman who clearly that's something that black girls get asked all the time, is that fixation on their hair. And it is a gameplay thing. If you go, oh, how do you deal with your hair? You go, your hair looks fantastic, by the way. How do you keep it like that while you're playing sport? But then when every other reporter asks it for it not being about them, and I think we are in a better place than, say, 20 years ago with Maria Sharapovas and the Anna Kournikovas, where the being on what's their Playboy cover was going to be like was the a big thing on everyone's minds all the time. Whereas I think the experience of Emma Raducanu has been a really good example, because she does nothing that she doesn't want to do. She won that US Open when I think she was 17, and now is fabulously wealthy, and she doesn't get asked the kinds of questions that I imagine the young female tennis players would have been asked in recent history. So what can we do? I don't know what we can do. What do we think would take steps to solving some of these issues or mitigating their impact?
I think that being a bit more creative about how we teach fitness at school would probably be the first step to, I think that there is a huge amount of value in team sports and competitive sports, and I think they should absolutely be encouraged at school. But I also think that in a time when we are seeing a definite rise in, for whatever reason, in people struggling with neurodiversity, and being neurodiverse, that, when you factor that in and you factor in physical disabilities, that asking everyone to participate in competitive sports at a sort of level that is sort of equal enough that you can actually have those competitions, you can have the teams, is a huge ask. And so I think that what we should be looking at doing is leveling the playing field, to coin a phrase, but making it so that people are more able to engage in healthy activity through school and gain an interest and an enjoyment in the benefits that you can gain from being active. So, it doesn't all have to be about team sports. It can be about things like, training for a marathon, or going on walks. We know that walking is really good. Going for walks. It can be about working out in the gym. It can be about doing sort of fitness classes like aerobics or some whatever is people are doing. But I think the thing is about getting young people engaged with their physical health, so that they understand, in order to live a long, healthy, active life, you need to be doing regular exercise, and it needs to raise your heart rate, and have you having to breathe a bit harder. These are the ways that you maintain a healthy body. Weight training isn't going to turn you into a muscle mummy. It's going to it can help you to prevent osteoporosis down the line. There's a huge amount of benefits that we can gain from being fit and healthy. And if we turn young girls off of that at school, then by the time they're into adulthood and you've got all of the pressures of adulting and all the draws on your time, you're not going to make time to work out, or to join the local netball team, or to get involved with your local rugby team, or to go running with the local running team, or cycling, or whatever. And I think that we really need to teach people how to look after themselves when they're younger. And one of those things is about health and fitness. And I think that you can do that at the same time as improving their ability to sort of be a team player. but you don't need to do it by being a football team for everyone. Some people are good. That's great. It's going to work really well for them, and we should absolutely have that. But other people, it might be you're the gym group. You go to the gym and you support each other and you encourage them as a team. So even though they're not playing a competitive game, they can still be a team. And I think those are the things that we should be really encouraging in young girls and young women.
I think for me, I want to talk about kind of returning to activity and adulthood. So I talked in the previous episode about how my various experiences of physical activity being linked to a medicalized approach kind of turned me off of physical activity and sort of movement and staying fit generally and doing sport. And because I associated it with helping out my physiotherapy, in the end I hated my physio therapy. I was given the choice of whether to continue it at age 18 or not continue it. And I was asked the question, would you like to walk better? And at the time I thought about it and I said, well, no, I'm quite happy as I am, because I was tired of feeling like my disability was essentially holding me back. And that was a lot of internalized ableism. And I've since learned about that and learned to accept my condition is a part of me and I'm going to have to manage it. And part of that is being physically active. And as I've got older and older, I realised I'm living in a body that's going through something called post-impairment syndrome, which is where you've lived with a physical condition, or in my case, the neurological condition, for several decades, and your body has overcompensated. So it starts to age faster than your non-disabled contemporaries, for example. So my body in my mid-30s is probably the same as a non-disabled person's body a decade or more ahead of me. So I'm having to manage that physical condition. And I really noticed also the increased impact or negative impact of a more sedentary lifestyle, particularly after the pandemic, when we weren't allowed out and to do as much physical activity or to be as physically active as we were previously. Previously, before the pandemic, I wasn't working a lot of hours, but I was working in jobs where I would be moving around, going up and down stairs, etc., etc. And suddenly I wasn't doing that for a good couple of years, and I really noticed a decline in my mobility and my ability to balance myself, and I was starting to fall over a lot more. So I went back to physio at hospital and sort of did an intensive course to kind of stop falls and things, and then I thought, right, maybe I should go and look at my leisure centre and see what activities I can do. And one of the best things I think for coming back around to physical activity is intergenerational fitness classes. And I say that as somebody who has picked the inclusive fitness classes because they're accessible to me, but then a large amount of the people that go to them are retired people. So I've made a lot of friends with people who are in their sort of 70s and 80s. I'm the youngest person there by far, but sometimes there are sort of people in between my age and their age, but it's quite rare. But it has helped me have that sort of setting where I'm in a group, we're all doing the same thing, we all struggle with different bits of it, but we're all trying together and we're staying active once a week, which is better than nothing as well. And another key thing I kind of wanted to talk about is there's no one size fits all. This is the level of physical activity you must do every week and therefore you're healthy kind of thing. It's different for everybody. And I've been learning that a lot as part of sessions I've been going to with a lot of other people with cerebral palsy, with a sort of charity that works. Rather, it's not a charity, it's more like a sort of social enterprise. But essentially, they hold these sessions about movement and the importance of movement, even if it's like a non-traditional idea of exercise. Still really important to be moving because of that post-impairment syndrome and those extra conditions you might be getting when you get older with cerebral palsy, things like osteoporosis, etc. So I've come back around to the idea of physical activity as I've got older. I'm less anti-physical activity now because I know it's going to help me as I get older to not necessarily improve my mobility, but to maintain my mobility and to maintain my strength, my muscle strength, which is going to be really important in the future. So yeah, I've gone quite personal again, but I think it's really good to illustrate that you can come back to sport and physical activity at any point, which is positive, definitely.
And it really, coming back to like how poorly school has prepared you for this scenario. Oh yeah, and you reach. So I imagine that post-impairment syndrome isn't a cutting edge, brand new realization that they've had.
Sort of. It wasn't really a thing that I learned about until I started working with Skype after the pandemic, because Skype originated as a cerebral palsy charity, but now it is the nation's leading disability charity. And there's been a lot of research within cerebral palsy about what happens to adults who have cerebral palsy. A lot of the medical world views cerebral palsy as a childhood condition, but it doesn't stop when you reach 18, even though that physio support stops. It does continue into adulthood, but we're sort of left behind almost, because there's no sort of yearly checks or anything like that. That's one of the campaigns for the CP movement, which is the group I was talking about with those sessions on movement. So yeah, it is being researched more and more, but in the 90s and even in the 80s, there was barely any recognition of cerebral palsy as a lifelong condition.
That is, yeah. So again, just like with the young black girls at sport, going, I wonder how the broader societal inequalities are reflected in children. You're going, oh yes, it makes sense that black girls are being not getting as much as they deserve. And you go, oh yeah, well, women's health hasn't been researched properly for forever. And you go, okay, and then, what about disabled people? So my assumption was, surely they must have known about this for quite some time. And you go, well, no, they didn't, because they hadn't done the research, because they hadn't done the research. So the amount of times that I've felt where I look around and go, why didn't anyone tell me about this? Why didn't someone explain this to me when I was young, so that then I could prepare myself for it now? And that's another failing of the system. I'll end my single idea for the moment is there's a good article, another good article by Women in Sports, saying boys will be boys, but about creating a new generation of male allies, because the extent to which it's not the girl's responsibility to force the system into to blaze their trail into things and be the one girl on the boys' sports team, or be the one that overcomes all adversity. It's about building a generation of boys and a generation of male role models who will be that support within the system to be supporting. Because what a mentor should be is helping a child reach that organic version of themselves that they can grow into. And it's just devastating seeing how majorly lacking it is for children. I wonder if the Scandinavian countries have solved school, because they seem to have solved most of society's ills. That we'll bring it to a close there. Thank you both for this conversation. One of our heavier ones, but it's important to have these conversations. As I said at the end of the last one, we do have fun as well. You can watch some of our live streams on our Twitch or on our YouTube, and you know where to find us every Thursday. So until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.